Now, I have written 6 brand strategy books. One of them is called Killer Differentiators. This is the one that I use a lot in my work. In this book, I wrote about the 13 strategies of differentiation that companies can use to differentiate themselves. I'm not going to go into details, although I can share the contents of this book with you if you want, but that will take another hour, time that we don't have, right? So if you don't want to differentiate, that's fine. You need to sell cheap. I always tell my clients right at the start, there are 2 ways to grow the business. Only 2 ways to grow the business. Number 1, build a strong brand by being highly differentiated. Number 2, sell cheap. Because these are the only 2 ways to grow the business. If you are not differentiated, you have to sell cheap. If you can't sell cheap, you have to find a way to differentiate yourself. So price becomes less of an issue. Price will always be an issue. But if you're highly differentiated, it becomes less of an issue, right? If you look at these apples here, they all look the same to me, to you. So you buy the one that is second from the right because it's the cheapest, is 30 cents. So there's nothing wrong with you selling cheap, okay? Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with you selling cheap. But in order to sell cheap, you need to have what is known as a structural cost advantage, like Dell. Direct sales model, no middleman, so they save a lot of money in terms of distribution costs, so they can sell at half the price of HP, they still make the same amount of money year in, year out, right? So if you don't have a structural cost advantage, you do need to find a way to differentiate. If you don't have a structural cost advantage and you try to sell cheap, you will eventually cut your profits until there's nothing left. I've seen way too many companies like this in the past, Singapore companies. They are not differentiated, so they keep cutting their prices. Every year they cut a bit, cut a bit, cut a bit. So their net profit after tax from 12–13% eventually dropped to 0.4%, and 2 years after that it was -4, -5, -7. Too many cases like this have happened, right? If you are not differentiated and you can't sell cheap sustainably, I can guarantee you it's a matter of 2 to 4 years before your brand dies. Simple as that. This I can give you a guarantee in writing because I've seen way too many of such things happen to companies in the past, right? The third branding landmine that companies typically step on is they attack the enemy's weakness. They don't attack the enemy's strength. Now, this may sound counterintuitive, right? Why wouldn't you attack the enemy's weakness? That's why they are weak. That's what weaknesses are for, right? You attack the weakness, right? But if you do attack your enemy's weakness, everybody else is doing that. Every competitor has a weakness that everyone else can attack. If you just attack your competitor's weakness, it's not going to differentiate you because that's what every other competitor is doing, right? It will be more effective if you can find your enemy's #1 strength and turn it into a weakness. You know this, right? The cola wars that has been running between Coke and Pepsi for, I think, close to 134 years now, this year, 134 years. So what made Coke so successful is because it's the real thing. Coke tells the world, we are the real thing, because they invented soft drinks way back in 1870, something like 1874, 75, something like that. So Coke says we are the real thing. If you're not drinking Coke, what are you drinking? You're drinking the fake thing, right? So how did Pepsi succeed? Pepsi is still #2. They used to be #3, but today they are #2. A very close, very profitable #2. What did Pepsi do to eat into Coke's like 80% market share at one point in time? Today, they are quite similar. I think it's like 44 versus 41 or something like that. So Pepsi turned Coke's strength into a weakness by saying, yes, you may be the real thing, but you are the real thing because you are the old thing. So Pepsi took the opposite position by being the young thing. So from 1984 onwards, Pepsi stopped using old people in their TV commercials. From 1984 onwards, you always see young, hip, trendy, celebrities in their prime being used in Pepsi TV commercials, right? Because Pepsi's tagline is simply this: come alive with the Pepsi generation, because we are the young thing, Coke is the old thing. But the truth of the matter is, The age difference between Pepsi and Coke is only 10 years. They are both over 130 years old, but perception is reality in branding. And Pepsi managed to turn Coke's #1 strength, which is the real thing, into a weakness, which is the old thing. Now, here's another example. For, I think, 60 over years, Hertz was the #1 in rental cars, right? So Hertz will keep telling the world we are #1 in rental cars. So they continue to be #1. When you're #1 and you keep reminding people that you're #1, you will usually remain #1. So Avis came along and took the opposite position from Hertz. Avis says, Avis used to say this: we are only #2, so we try harder. So for the longest time, what Avis was telling the world is, Hertz is #1, we are #2, there's no need to look anywhere else. For 60 over years, this was a beautiful formula for #1 and #2, until Enterprise came along and turned both their strengths into a weakness. You look at Enterprise rent-a-car's tagline, "We'll pick you up." So what Enterprise did is, Enterprise looked at where Hertz and Avis are strong. They are both very strong in the airport. So Enterprise went to the suburbs, right? Today they are also in the airports, but in those days they went to the suburbs and they focused on people in the suburbs, right? And Enterprise came out with this brilliant strategy. When you rent a car from Enterprise, they will actually send the car to you. You take the car, drive it around, you know. After that, when you're done, you just give them a call or you text them. They will come and pick up the car from you. Hertz and Avis didn't do that. So Enterprise basically turned a strength, the #1 and #2 strength, into a weakness. They don't pick you up. So today, Enterprise is #1. Hertz is #2. Avis no longer says we are only #2, so we try harder. Avis just says we try harder because they are #3 now. What would be even better than turning your competitor's strength into a weakness is if you can turn your own weakness into a strength. Now, us being Asians, right? Typically, what we try to do is we try to be all-rounders. We try to nail down our weakness, you know, and fix it, you know, work so hard at fixing our weaknesses and all that. You can hide your weakness, you can try to fix it, you can turn it into a strength, right? I rather go for option #3, try to turn the weakness into a strength. So Listerine used to have a huge weakness that competitors like Scope attack every day, because Listerine tastes like floor cleaner. I haven't tasted floor cleaners before, but that's what I was told. Listerine tastes like floor cleaner, right? So it's a weakness, but they turn that weakness into a strength by telling people, by admitting that they have this weakness. It's the taste that you hate twice a day. That's their tagline, right, for the longest time. The taste you hate twice a day. When you admit your weakness, your customers, right, strangely will give you a positive. You will give you a strength. When you admit a negative, they will give you a positive. So what did their customers do? Their customers basically looked at Listerine. Yeah, I hate the taste, but it tastes so bad because it really kills germs, right? It doesn't mean that a good tasting mouthwash like Scope doesn't kill germs. It's just perception, right? Listerine tastes terrible. Therefore, it must be very good at killing germs. So Listerine managed to turn that weakness into a strength. This was one of the very first clients I served many years ago, right? Danovel, the handcrafted fabric sofa. They, the founder's daughter, Madam Ko, who took over from her parents, said, look, my workers are very old at that time, 13, 14 years back. My workers are very old. We make everything by hand. So we are actually a handmade fabric sofa. So we are always late. We can't meet big orders and all these things. And yet their price is actually very low, very reasonable. They say it's very reasonable. To me, it's very low. So the problem, or rather the weakness, is they are slow. Their people are old, they haven't had a chance to train out the next generation of craftsmen yet, and they are not automating back in those days because the old folks, they don't want to do it. So we turn that weakness, that they are slow, into a strength. We are slow because we are handcrafted. And I also told them to raise their price, to at least double their price, which they have, on some of their items, they have actually increased the price a lot because it's a handcrafted fabric so far. They're slow, but that's because they're handcrafted, right? Now, this one, I can't share with you the company's name. It was one of my clients' competitor in India. So my client is a Singapore company that sells power generators. So they have this very irritating, they told me, we have this very irritating competitor in India, you know, that's eating our lunch, stealing our lunch and eating it. So I asked them why. When I looked at that competitor, they are actually very lousy. It's actually a very lousy company. Their power generators are not properly built. They're not tight. They're always leaking oil. So I asked my client, when a power generator leaks that much oil, they showed me photos. When a power generator leaks that much oil, does it stop the generator from working? They said no, as long as you still have 20% oil left in the reservoir or in the oil sump, it will work fine. So this company, this competitor of theirs, did not fix the problem because it's going to cost $3 million Sing to retool the factory to fix that weakness. So they turned that weakness into a strength by offering free monthly servicing. Actually, power generators, I was told, you can leave it there for 2 years, just top up the oil and make sure it has a diesel or whatever it is that you're using to power it. It will run fine for 2 years without you touching it, right? So this company actually offered free servicing, which nobody else did. Not even the big brands like Cummins and Caterpillar from US. Nobody offers free monthly servicing. All they do when they go for servicing is they send 2 workers to wipe the whole power generator, make sure it's clean and shiny and top up the oil. That's it. So they managed to turn a weakness into a strength by doing this, and their sales grew. Hopefully today they have fixed the oil leak problems, but I don't know. I don't keep touch with this company anymore, or rather with this competitor anymore. Branding landmine number 4 is not keeping the main things the main things. Peter Drucker, the father of modern management, wrote this in 1958, and it is still relevant today. A business has only 2 basic functions, innovation and marketing. These are the things that produce results. Everything else is cost. I agree with Drucker because if you don't innovate, you become obsolete. If you're highly innovative, like many of our Singapore companies are, but you don't market well, you will also be left in the dust by your competitors, right? So innovation and marketing. Now, if you look at this company, which I used to study, Motorola. Motorola is actually a fantastic company, very innovative. They invented the car radio, the walkie-talkie, the pager, the radio used by Neil Armstrong when he landed on the moon. When Neil Armstrong said, this is a small step for man, but a giant step for mankind. He was actually using a Motorola radio. And Motorola invented the mobile phone in 1983. They also invented the first true 32-bit microprocessor, the lightest mobile phone in 96, the first smartphone with browsing and email facilities built in. That was Motorola. But where is Motorola today? A lot of you will agree that Motorola is not, they're still around, but they're not such a powerhouse player anymore. Why? Because a lot of people have given a lot of reasons for why Motorola is no longer dominant today, but I think the underlying reason is they have somehow lagged behind in terms of innovation. Now, what is innovation? If you ask any Singapore SME, do you believe in innovation? Do you believe in marketing? The answer is always yes. We believe in innovation, we believe in marketing. But most SMEs I come across, they don't have a common definition of what innovation is and what marketing is. Even among the top 5 people in the company, even among the C-suite executives in the company, they don't have a common definition of what is innovation and what is marketing. So if you don't have a common definition of innovation or marketing in your company, how do you know that you have done the right thing in terms of innovation? Now, there are many different definitions of what innovation is, but I like this definition. The introduction of a new thing or a new method or the first attempt to carry out a new idea. What this definition means is that you don't need to invent something to be innovative. In the past, about 25 years ago, every time people talk about innovation, they are talking about invention. If you are not inventing something, That's not innovation. I came across this company years ago. They did something that I considered quite innovative. It was actually an idea proposed by one of the secretaries. She said, look, we use a lot of paper, we use a lot of paper clips. Most of the paper clips are thrown away, right? So why don't we put a recycling bin whereby, once you take out the paper clip, you just throw it into the recycling bin, and at the end of the week, somebody will come along to collect those recycled paper clips. You guess how much money they saved on paper clips alone? 30,000 US a year. I thought it was an innovative idea. I mean, I would have told the board of directors to give this secretary, $30,000 in bonus that year, because that's how much her idea was saving the company, right? So you don't need to invent something in order to be innovative, right? Innovation does not necessarily equal invention. Although a lot of innovations came about as a result of invention, it's not necessary. Right. Now, let me give you some examples. When astronauts first went to space, they needed to write in space, but normal pens don't work because ink needs gravity to flow, right? In space, there's no gravity. So what do? You can do this. You can do what Fisher did. They invented the Fisher Space Pen. They spent about $2 million US to invent the Fisher Space Pen. It has got a pressurized tungsten carbide cartridge. Very fantastic sounding, right? So because it's pressurized, the ink can flow even upside down, underwater, in space, and all these things. Is this innovation? Yes. Did it require invention? Yes. So I was told the Russians didn't have money. Of course, this is an American invention, right, back in those days. The Russians didn't have so much money to come up with something like the space pen, and they refused to buy from their American counterparts. So what did the Russians do? They also did something highly innovative. The 2B pencil. I mean, does it write in space? Yeah, it does. Although the American engineers I've spoken to, they say, if you use a 2B pencil in space, it's actually very dangerous because once the tip breaks off, it can get lodged into some machinery in your space shuttle or whatever and cause a lot of problems. But I think you would expect the American engineers to say that, right? So you can use a 2B pencil to write in space. Is it innovative? Yes. Does it require invention? No. Right? Now, here's another example. There were these two factories. I can't tell you the names. They both installed highly automated production lines, production and packing lines, right? More or less, they're producing more or less the same things. But the problem is with both these factories, some of the boxes were not packed properly or they were empty. And then when they went out, they were just shipped to customers. Of course, customers were unhappy, right, when they received empty boxes. So what do? This is what Factory A did. They actually spent another $3.5 million to install vision inspection machines to x-ray the empty boxes as they zip past really fast on their production line. And once they detect an empty box, right, they would direct high-speed robotic arms to grab those boxes off the production line. So the production line doesn't have to stop. There was another system that was proposed that once you x-ray the boxes and if it's empty, you stop the production line. But that will defeat the purpose of an automated production line, right? So this was what they did. They spent additional money, vision inspection machines, robotic arms, production line doesn't stop, all the empty boxes were removed, customers were happy. What did Factory B do? Factory B actually also did something very innovative that required only a few $100s. They actually went out and bought a few large industrial fans. They just put the fans next to the production line, turn them on, and when the empty boxes pass by, right, because they're so light, they are actually blown off the production line. At the end of every 7-hour shift, right, the workers will just go there and collect the empty boxes. Did it work? Yes. Is it innovative? I would say yes. Did it require invention? No. Right? The fourth branding landmine that companies can step on is thinking that branding is for Coca-Cola. For so many years, in the early parts of my career, right, every time I meet a B2B company, I talk to the CEO. After about 3 to 5 minutes, the CEO will stop me. They will say, Mr. Tai, I understand that branding is important and that is what you do, but we are not selling Coca-Cola. Why do we need branding? We are a B2B company. So that is what I had to face in the early parts of my career. And I only used to serve B2B companies back in those days. So it was an uphill battle, right? But I would venture to say that a strong brand is actually more important if you're a B2B company rather than a consumer brand or B2C company. Why? Because when you buy a B2B product or service, it usually costs more. You buy a vision inspection machine, it's a few $100,000. You buy a construction machine, is $50,000 to $100,000. You buy a CRM software, right? Depending on how big your company is, it could be $2 to $3 million. It could be anything from $50,000 to $2-3 million, right? Or maybe more, right? So when you buy something that is B2B, the risk is much higher. When the risk is high, what do most people do? They play it safe. They will buy from the strongest brand within their price range. Not everybody can buy from premium brands. Some people will have to buy from mid-range brands. Some people will have to buy from budget brands. That's the reality of life. But regardless of which price range you buy from, when there is so much risk involved in buying that product or that service, you buy from the strongest brand within your price range. That is why when I was working in the States in the 90s, right, everybody keeps telling me this. Nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. I mean, IT engineers, software engineers, purchasing managers, will normally tell me, always buy IBM because nobody gets fired for buying IBM because it's the strongest brand. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the computer business, right? Now, the last branding landmine that I want to share with you today is standing in the middle of the road. If you look at this chart here, this is quite common. This is quite common among Singapore companies. This is called the price quality axis. Right? On the left-hand side, you see quality, low to high. On the right-hand side, you see price, low to high. Now, this is typically where premium brands are positioned. High quality, high price. And this is typically where budget brands are positioned, Budget brands are usually positioned here. Low price, but quality may also be relatively low, right? Where do a lot of Singapore companies position themselves? Here. This is typically, I mean, I've come across so many companies from so many different sectors, right? This is the typical Singapore brand's strategy. We are almost as good as the leading brands, but almost as cheap as the entry-level brands. Does this sound familiar to you? I mean, have you worked for companies that use such a strategy? This sounds fantastic, again, in the war room, but out there in the real world, it doesn't really work. I mean, I've served Singapore consumer electronics companies before. In the distant past, the CEOs of these companies will usually tell me, we are almost as good as Samsung, but only 30% more expensive than the Chinese brands, something like that, right? They thought it's a fantastic strategy. I told them it's not going to work in the real world. They didn't listen. Within 3 to 4 years, they have failed. One was even a listed company, close shop, right? You can, because if you put yourself in that position whereby you are almost as good as the leading brand, but almost as cheap as the entry-level brands, you are going to have two sets of problems. Number one is you are going to be stepped on by premium brands from on top. And number two, you are going to be kicked by the budget brands from below. Why do you want to do that? I mean, you're stuck in the middle. Stuck in the middle is where accidents happen, right? It's where brands get killed. So if you see the blue line here, this is what I call the commodities continuum. It's a term that I use to try to place my clients' products and services sometimes. On the left-hand side is highly commoditized products and services. When I say highly commoditized, I don't mean that they are commodities. Some of the most high-tech products that you see in the world, like memory cards, RAM chips, these are really high-tech products. They are actually highly commoditized. So being commoditized doesn't mean that it's a commodity, like coffee or tea or rice or oil, you know, things like that. On the right-hand side of that commodities continuum are the branded products, branded services. Then if you look at the green line, that's the price line. So you can either be premium or you can be budget. On the commodities continuum, you can either sell a commodity or you can sell a branded product or service. You can put your brand anywhere along the price vertical or along the commodities continuum, just not in the middle of the road. Because the middle of the road is where you get run down by trucks. One of my mentors, Jack Tai, he's the inventor of the concept of brand positioning. Way back in 1969, he is close to 90 years old now, 80 plus 90 years old. I think he has retired. He used to tell me, boy, don't stand in the middle of the road. Don't put your brand in the middle of the road because that is where accidents happen, right? It's actually very sage advice from 15 years ago. I still remember it today, right? So that is my presentation for today. I don't think you need to read this. Vincent has already introduced me. As I mentioned earlier, I have written 6 brand strategy books. I'm showing you 5 here because the first book was too ugly, according to most of my clients who have read the book. Some of them have told me, you know, this book is as good as it is ugly. So I asked my clients, is the book good? They say the book is very good. So I know that they know the book is, they are trying to say the book is extremely ugly. Please don't show it to the world and scare people, right? Okay, that concludes my presentation today. I will hand over to our moderator for today and take any questions that you might have. Thank you all for your time. Okay, how do I stop sharing? Yep.
Okay, so thank you very much, Jacky. It has been really, really informative. I've been taking a lot of notes, and I mean, this is really, really good. So I really want to appreciate, Jacky for spending his time to explain this simple, okay, but very, very important concepts in our own branding journey for our business. Okay, so please, for the audience, please put your question in the chat itself so that we can start asking Jacky, some questions that we may have. But what I want to do is I want to start, just start with the first question. This is by Alan. How to build branding on a shoestring budget? Because I think a lot of companies are thinking that, okay, if we need to go into this area, and yet, we need to also balance, okay, our financials for the business. How do you actually do it effectively, but on budget as well? Jacky?
Effectively on the budget, okay. To build a strong brand is about positioning and differentiation. The first thing you do is you try to figure out, you get your colleagues together, brainstorm on the positioning of the company or the brand, right? This is something that you can do on your own, by getting your C-suite executives and some of the more interested colleagues that you have from the rank and file, the more junior staff, to brainstorm on the positioning of the company. Positioning is important because it's a statement of strategic intent. It tells the world who you are, what you do, where you are going, how you're going to get there. Positioning has 6 basic components. Vision, what is the future that you're trying to create? Mission, how are you going to create the future using the 3 Ps, product, process, people. Define them. The third component in positioning is category. Category means what is the space that you are seeking to conquer? Define the category. The fourth thing is the top 3 values to you, right? Some companies, they have listed down 11, 12 different core values. That's way too many. 3 values that are the most important to you, that you want everybody to embrace. The next thing is enemy. What is the enemy that you are here to fight? The enemy is not a competitor. When I say you need to pick an enemy to fight, It means you need to define the problem that you're here to solve. And the problem is not a competitor. Competitors are competitors. The enemy needs to be something way larger, way bigger, way scarier than your top 10 competitors, right? Then the last thing is value proposition. What is the number one benefit that you bring to your customers? You bring a lot of benefits to your customers, but if you try to communicate all the 15 or 21 or 30 benefits that you bring to customers, you become an incredible brand. What is an incredible brand? An incredible brand is a brand that has no credibility because you sound too good to be true. So you only communicate benefit number one, which is your value proposition. Once you're done with that, you look at how you can differentiate yourself from your competitors. For this, it requires an understanding of the 13 strategies of differentiation. It requires an understanding of how your competitors are differentiated. Look at your top 10 competitors. Be very, very specific, very objective, very honest. Look at your top 10 competitors and try to figure out what makes them so good, what makes them so special, what makes them so unique, what makes them so strong, so differentiated, right? So be honest with yourself. You don't have to share the information with outsiders, of course, but find out how your competitors are differentiated and then look at how you can differentiate against these competitors using the same 13 strategies. I mean, most of you here in this webinar, you can do these things on your own. Some of you will get 30% of the way. Some of you will get 60% of the way. Some of you will even get 80% of the way by doing this on your own. And hopefully when you reach 80%, you'll come to somebody like me and Alan and Glenn. We will do the rest for you, right? The last mile.
Okay, thank you, Jacky. One of the in the chat group, someone posted something which is really, really good, really helpful. It's by Chris. It says, "How do you do branding with shoestring budget?" He says, "Well, for a start, you can buy the books by Jacky." So you can actually learn. Okay, I mean, what is something I encourage you? You can, when you listen to this, you get the overview of ideas from Jacky. But when you get the books, you can really digest, the fundamentals, the basics, the foundational stuff. So I'll encourage you, okay, to go out there and learn more. Okay, learn more, get the books, okay, and then to really, to really look at your own organizations and how you intend to do your branding work. Now, I'm going to quickly go through.
Vincent, may I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
My books are no longer available on Amazon or by my publisher, Marshall Cavendish. They have completely sold out on that, but there are e-copies on Google Play Store. There are e-copies on Google Play Store. Amazon used to carry the hard copies, not the soft copies. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Jacky, I'm just wondering whether if it's okay for you to maybe at a later time send a link to the WhatsApp group so that people who wants to really learn from you can actually purchase the ebooks. Yep.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm just looking at some of the questions. Here's one. What do you think of changing brand every few years? Why do big boys do that?
Sorry, come again?
So this is a question. It says, why do you think of changing brand every few years? Why do big boys do that?
What do you mean by changing brands? Are you talking about changing the strategy or changing the brand name itself?
I think this is in relationship to, I believe, because the question I'm just reading directly from the chat, I believe is how big boys pivot, okay, the big brands pivot to really create a new brand to get new market shares, a new product. So is it why they do that? Is this why they're changing brands to capture new products instead of what do you call that? Using the line extension, okay, which could be a threat for them.
Okay, for the big brands, we are talking about multi-billion-dollar MNCs, right? For those big brands, right? There are many reasons why they change their brand strategy, the way they position or their tagline or their communications and things like this. For many global MNCs, right? Every time they have a new CEO, they will change their strategy. I mean, it's very, very common. So I don't know why they do that. You have to ask those new incoming CEOs. So every time they have a new CEO, they have a new strategy, right? And that happens in corporate America every 2 to 3 years. The second reason why they change is every now and then, their advertising agency would get bored with the old strategy that's still working. So they will encourage their clients to change. And the clients also have this big MNCs also, they have itchy fingers and itchy ears. After 2 to 3 years, you know, they want something new. They want something new, so they will change, right? Or every time you change your advertising or PR agency, they will recommend that you change how you position yourself, how you communicate, things like that. Having said that, there's nothing wrong with that, except where every time you change something, right? Every time you change how you communicate, as long as you are still communicating the same idea, it is okay. For example, Toyota is what? Toyota is a refrigerator. I used to tell people, Toyota doesn't make cars. It makes a refrigerator with 4 wheels. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Toyota. It got me through 4 years of extremely cold winter when I was studying and working in the state of Wisconsin, right? The thing never breaks down. But a Toyota is a reliable car. It's bulletproof, practically. So if Toyota, every time Toyota changes its communication, changes its so-called brand strategy, if they are still telling you Toyota equals reliable, that's fine. The problem comes when Toyota tries to tell the world something that it is not. Toyota equals sexy, for example. Toyota is for young people, for example. You know, nothing wrong with targeting young people, nothing wrong with trying to be sexy. But the world perceives Toyota as reliable, but not as sexy, right? So when you change your communications and you try to tell people something that you are not, something that you are perceived not to be, that is where the problem rises, right? You can change the look and feel of your brand and all these things, but it needs to communicate the same idea. So you need to know. So you need to know what your brand idea is. Your brand equals what? Your brand equals premium. Your brand equals human. Your brand equals, you know, whatever it is that you are equal to, right?
Okay. All right. There's a lot of questions, Jacky, and the thing is, I will try to get through as many of them as possible. There's some crossovers. There's one that actually mentions about being positioned in the middle of the road. So if your company is positioned, your brand is positioned in the middle of the road, what steps do you need to take to actually move away from that position? Is there a framework to follow, or is it up to each individual brand to determine where they are and
okay, the first, that's a very, very good question. Whoever asked that, thank you for that very incisive question. So if you are a brand in the middle of the road, right? You're not premium, you're not budget, you are in the middle. It doesn't mean that you have to push yourself up, which is next to impossible. If you want to push yourself down in terms of price, that's a lot easier to do. But whether you can price low and still make money, as I've said, that depends on whether you have a structural cost advantage. Now, if you are a brand stuck in the middle, I would suggest the first thing you do is look at the size of the middle market. Is the middle market huge? If the middle market is huge, like I mentioned just now, when people buy products or services, right? They either buy from premium brands, they buy from mid-price brands, or they buy from budget brands. If you are stuck in the middle, you are a mid-price brand, look at the mid-size market. How big is it? If it is very big and it is still growing, that's fine. There are some categories whereby the very high end of that category is growing very fast. The very low end of the category is growing very fast, but the mid-range is dying, right? So if you are in such a market, you either move up or you move down, or you launch a different brand to go up or launch a different brand to go down. I will give you an example. Many years ago, I served this company called Leeden. Leeden is a Singapore, it was a Singapore main board listed company. It has been acquired by Taiyo Nippon Sanso of Japan, Japan's largest industrial gas company. They used to sell they are still selling welding machines, take and make welding machines, right? So they used to sell other people's brands like Lincoln, Hobart, Miller, very high-end stuff. So when Stephen Tam, the CEO then came to me, he said, I want to develop a brand of my own. So I asked him, where do you want to position it? High, middle, low. He said, low, go as low as possible. So I asked him why. He told me, it's very simple. If you look at my market, if you look at my category, which is take and make TIG and MIG welding machines, right? The high end is growing, but it's not growing that fast. The mid-range is dying, but the low end, the entry level welding machines, that's where the growth is coming from. It's growing at like close to triple digit a year at that time. So he said, therefore, we are going to position ourselves in the low end of the market. So if you're stuck in the middle, look at the middle market, is it growing? If you're selling cars, for example, the middle is not where you want to be because the middle is actually dying. The budget sector is growing. The premium sector is growing. In fact, for cars, right, the premium sector brands like BMW, they are actually outselling many mass market car brands. You see? So that's not where you want to be. Mass market, that's not where you want to be. Right?
Okay, thank you very much. Jacky, just want to ask this on behalf of most of the people here. We are business owners, SME owners, and some of us run organizations as well. In view of the COVID pandemic that's happening throughout the world, the rules of marketing, have they changed much, or do we still do very much, what you have shared with us in terms of the fundamentals of how to brand ourselves and how to market ourselves? Or do we need to do something a bit different now that the world has changed a little bit from where we were before?
The world has changed a lot from where we were just 6-7 months before. So that is a very incisive question. But you don't change how you brand yourself. The world might have changed, the customers might have changed, but the principles of branding, they are like the laws of mathematics. 1 + 1 = 2, right? They don't change regardless of industry, regardless of market, regardless of products or services, right? What has changed after COVID-19 is that a lot of businesses need to change the way they sell. Now you don't sell, now maybe you don't do bricks and mortar selling so much, you do online selling more. Now, in terms of communicating with your customers, you don't communicate with your customers through live events, you communicate with your customers through virtual events. For example, if events is one of those things that you use to communicate with your customers. So your brand remains the same. Your positioning, your differentiation, your tagline, your messaging remains the same, except the outlets that you use to communicate to your customers, the outlets that you use to sell to your customers and to do order fulfillment, they might have changed. But the principles of branding remain the same.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, that is very, very helpful to know. I'm just going to go into one other questions. There are actually quite a number of questions for you, Jacky, that we won't be able to cover this today in our Q&A. Are you open to maybe taking the questions offline and maybe we can post this as a document to be shared in our WhatsApp group at a later time?
Sure. I mean, sure. You can compile all the questions and email to me. I will try to answer them as best as I can, then send it back to you. You can post it on the Brands for Good group chat, or you can email to all our participants today. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I do see it's quite a number of questions. There was actually a question from somebody, Meng Yi, who said, what is B2B branding? What do you do? B2B branding, B2C branding, hybrid branding, B2B2C or B2C2B, it's still branding. It's all about differentiation. Right? There's actually I actually don't make a difference between B2B branding and B2C branding. They are still all about differentiation, differentiating your cows from your competitors' cows.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Vincent, can I just share something? Well, I also have a sort of a period of my life, handling branding. That's how I got to know Jacky quite well now. maybe I just shared some insight. Number one, remember publicity is free, advertising is very expensive, right? So if you if you want to go and build a brand through advertisement, then you got to spend a lot of money, right? But if you know how to create news, right, of course, I hope create positive publicity. Or some people, will say publicity, whether good or bad, is still better than no publicity, right? Because brand awareness is all about making your brand known, right? And names is a very funny thing. The first time you hear it, you may say it sounds funny, right? I'm sure when first time Yahoo came out, Google came out, everybody say it sounds funny, right? But when you hear it many times, it becomes, once it becomes familiar, you get fond of it, right? I mean, I was just browsing through the news. You see, in 2011 election, Ong Yi Kang was a new face. Nobody knows him, right? Today, he's helming a GRC by himself, right? So familiarity is very important, right? And of course, if you create something entirely on your own, it takes a lot of effort to create that familiarity. And so that's why for Brands for Good, right, we want to create a sort of have this platform to share it, right? People come on board as we hear from experts, and if you have initiatives that we can run together, we'll be very happy to share that as well, right? And sometimes also it's easier to use a co-branding strategy, right? If you try to brand everything on your own, it'll take time for people to acknowledge your credibility or get to know you as a brand, right? Or know your brand personality. But if you immediately tie up with someone that already has that credibility, all right, it makes it a lot faster for people to trust you, or trust that brand personality, all right? So for that reason, you'll notice also we tie up a lot, right? And this is actually mutual gain, right? So we have sponsors like Maybank, 01. They need us, we need them. So we work together, right? ASEAN CSR Network, likewise, they need us, we need them. So we all work together, right? So in fact, now we have another campaign, the one that Glenn shared earlier. All right, this is a nationwide campaign and we are tying with SPH. I think it is a very good opportunity. If you want to, push your brand to a nationwide recognition, at least for people to hear about you. So we have this program or this project that we're working with SPH. We have drive a very hard bargain with SPH, asking for a very good price, right? So now this thing that Glenn mentioned earlier, Shop Save for Good, all right? It's not just on the newspaper. It's going to go on digital, go on radio. We're going to get celebrity to talk about it, right? So we can create brand awareness for you, right? Can create brand prominence, so people will hear about you. So these are things we do at Brands for Good. And so we hope, that we can help you boost your brand, right? Because if you are a company that is deserving of that, we feel proud that, when we help you succeed, many other, the wider society is going to benefit, not just your direct consumer. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Alan. That is really, really good information, because I think at the end of the day, what we want to do is to really connect everyone together and then to collaborate, look at areas of synergy, collaborate and work together. We are now going to be heading into the breakout rooms very soon. I just want to really take this opportunity to thank Jacky Tai again, for his very insightful sharing. I've learned a lot. I'm sure a lot of you have taken away a lot of good information as well. We will get the questions together to Jacky, and then we will post it on our WhatsApp group. I think there's also, if you look at the chat group, there's also the link to join our WhatsApp group. So that's where the questions and the answers will be shared over there. So please join us over there, be connected to us. So when we break out into the breakout rooms, there will be different breakout rooms. Feel free, stay together, just stay online for a while, get to know some people, because I think part of the process of networking is to really get to know people, and perhaps you might find someone that you have common ground with, and perhaps that's where, collaboration can happen. So I encourage you to stay, okay, stay for a while, join one of the breakout rooms, okay, continue to put your questions on the group chat so that we can capture it and send it to Jacky. And I want to thank all of you again, okay, for taking this time to be with us. So as we go into the breakout room, okay, thank you again, Jacky, for sharing. Okay, it's much appreciated. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Okay, it's great to see you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, send me those questions. I'm happy to answer them and then share with everyone else.
Okay, thank you, Jacky.
All right, thanks.
Okay, we're organized to put everyone into different breakout rooms. So just hang on a minute. And
Just 1 minute. Yeah.
Gentle reminder, Jacky, that you can float between the breakout rooms. So if you get a chance, maybe one of the few things to do is to go into the different rooms so that you can sort of meet everyone as well.
Okay, okay. Show me how to do it. I've never done breakout rooms before.
you will be prompted to join your breakout room. You just got to go click yes. You know, I want to join the breakout room. Very
Okay.
simple.
Okay. I
And
normally
when
just
you-
speak to everyone and then I just run off and do my things.
No, I think some of you, whoever is going to be in the breakout room with you, is going to really, get to hear some of your answers. So, it's going to be great.
When you are in the breakout room, Jacky, you just have to click on the breakout room button at the bottom and you can just move in and out. Oops.
Yep. All right. See you guys in the breakout room.
See you later.